Alright, so welcome back to NetSupport Insights. We're doing some live at Bett recordings and I'm here with Gary Henderson. Hi Gary, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Do you want to start just by introducing yourself a little bit?
Can do. So obviously my name is Gary Henderson, Director of IT at Millfield. I'm also an Association of Network Managers in Education Ambassador. Although I'm now on the kind of techie side. I was actually a qualified teacher and taught for quite a few years in secondary and FE before kind of moving over to the IT side of things.
Yeah, fantastic. So I wanted to ask you really about being kind of an expert in cybersecurity, about some of the recent kind of Gov.uk changes. Is there a kind of, could you give like just a little overview of some of the key changes that you've noticed?
I think, in terms of cybersecurity, what we're seeing is that the risks are just, in my view, increasing. It's almost a constant increase. I mean, what we have seen is a lot of kind of discussion around, AI as a threat vector, both in terms of, AI-based tools being used by criminals, but also in terms of attacks against AI platforms, AI data models, etc.
Yeah.
It's funny though that also AI may also provide the answer to some of that in AI tools that can defend. But I think what we've got is a continual and increasing threat level, and obviously education is a particular target for criminals, sadly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what are the kind of other key issues that you're seeing at the moment?
In terms of cyber, I think one of the issues, there are a few issues. I think probably the biggest thing is within cyber is no matter what we do, there's always going to be a risk. And I think within education, one of the key things is just doing the kind of basics. It's doing the patching, limiting people's access to what they actually require, rather than giving them too much access. Looking at the user awareness. I think user awareness is so important. No matter what the technical measures you've got, your first or maybe even your final line of defence is the humans, it's the users.
Yeah.
And that's why cyber criminals continue to be using phishing, smishing, quishing, and all of those style of social engineering style attacks. That's why they are so common, because it's actually quite often far easier to hack the human than it is to hack the technology.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. So would you recommend that schools really look at that kind of that user understanding and training? Is that somewhere where you think schools could really up their game?
Yeah, I think for me it is one of the basics. I sort of created probably a year or so ago, maybe a bit longer than that ago, a kind of framework. And I mentioned patching and least privilege and things like that. But one of the things I said was awareness. Make sure the staff are aware of what the threats are. And aware of what to do when they get caught. And I use the word when, not if, because it will happen. And we're all human. Even myself as director of IT, I work with IT all the time. I know the threats, but I found myself almost taken in the past with malicious phone calls and the likes. So it can happen to all of us. So it's about that, being aware what to do, what signs to look out for, and also in the event that you do suspect you have fallen for something or your account has been compromised, what do you do about it in the school? I also think there's a big bit about kind of building that awareness within at a school leadership level that cyber isn't an IT issue. If you suffer a ransomware attack, it doesn't just affect IT, it affects everything. It affects your admissions, bringing in new students, it affects pastoral, it affects academics, it affects parent comms. It's organisational, and therefore when looking at kind of planning and preparing for the eventuality that it happens, we should be doing that at that level, at governor level, at school leadership level. How are we going to manage communication with parents if our IT goes down? How are we going to manage teaching and learning? How are we going to? That's where it should be looked at.
Make sure that everything is included. Absolutely. So do you think that perhaps, as you were talking about training the staff, do you think that there is also that need then for training for leaders as well, so that they can be confident in being part of those conversations?
Yeah, I think there is. I mean, obviously, I think it was the NCSE created their kind of toolkit which was aimed at kind of governors and
Yeah.
whatever. And I think that's really, really important so that they understand that it isn't an IT issue. And I think that's one of my concerns. I think things are getting better. You know, things with the DFE's digital standards, I think, are helping, and they are sort of saying that actually no, this isn't an IT issue. This isn't for your network manager, your IT director to deal with on their own. This is a school-wide thing, and we have to be aware of it at all levels, and including at the SLT and the governance level.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of those digital standards, is there anything there that you think schools need to be really aware of?
I mean, I think the digital standards, again, they cover some of the basics about patching and whatever. I think knowing that that it continues to be social engineering attacks, particularly phishing, and account compromise following on from phishing, seems to be so common. The one thing I tend to pick out from the digital standards is MFA, it's multi-factor authentication.
Yes.
Get multi-factor authentication turned on, and turn it on for as many people as you can. Turn it on for everyone if you can. Now I know that might not be, if you're looking at younger age children, that doesn't quite work. But turn it on for as many people as you can. And where if you've not got it turned on, look at other mitigation measures, conditional access and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really great piece of advice, actually, like you say, to stop people getting caught out.
Well, it just means if the criminals do manage to get your password through a data breach of a site, it's not enough to get in. And we've seen that. I mean, I've seen, councils being breached, and then once they're breached, the criminals will then use that to attack schools and other organisations. I've seen schools being breached and the same happening. The multi-factor authentication, it's not, and the thing is, I will say, multi-factor authentication isn't perfect. There are ways to thwart MFA, sadly, but at least it makes it more difficult, and it adds that other layer, that defence in depth.
It's trying to keep adding to those defences.
It's slow. I mean, I think in a lot of cases, the criminals will go for their easiest target. So if you can slow them down and make it difficult, you hope that they move on to somewhere else.
Absolutely. Brilliant. All right, well, thank you, Gary. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today.
Oh, thank you very much.